Liverpool have long been renowned for their frugality in the transfer market. Since FSG's first summer in charge 14 years ago, the Reds have had a lower net spend than Tottenham and West Ham. Meanwhile, Manchester United, Manchester City and Chelsea all have a net spend over twice the size of theirs. It's one of the reasons why Jurgen Klopp's work at Anfield was so lauded, and why FSG have often faced criticism from Liverpool supporters, despite the team's success. Liverpool's marquee signings, whether that be Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, or Darwin Núñez, were still monumental, rivaling the biggest signings at almost any other Premier League club, but they were rare, highly targeted, and they were often facilitated by sales. Last summer, in Arne Slot's first season at Anfield, which many people expected to be a real uphill battle following the loss of Jurgen Klopp, Liverpool only made two new signings. Federico Chiesa from Juventus, who played a grand total of 104 minutes of Premier League football last season, and Georgi Mamachvili from Valencia, who played 0 minutes, as he remained in La Liga for all of last season as part of his transfer agreement. This summer window has seen a radical departure from that tradition. Despite comfortably winning the league in Arne Slot's first season in charge, Liverpool looks set to have the highest spending summer in the history of the club. Florian Wirtz has been brought in from Bayer Leverkusen for a club record £100 million fee, rising to £116 million subject to add-ons, the latter of which would also be a British record fee, overtaking the potential £115 million that Chelsea could end up paying for former Liverpool target Moises Caicedo, along with Leverkusen teammate Jeremie Frimpong, whose £29.5 million release clause Liverpool activated at the beginning of the window. Though not yet completed at the time of this recording, Liverpool are also expected to sign Bournemouth's Milos Kerkez for £40 million, in addition to being heavily linked with Ajax's Jorrel Hato, Crystal Palace's Marc Guehi, and, most notably, Newcastle's Alexander Isak, with a centre-back and a centre-forward high up Richard Hughes and Arne Slot's list of priorities. Already the highest spending club in world football this summer, in terms of both net spend and overall expenditure, it seems likely that by the end of the window, Liverpool could have forked out around €400 million on new arrivals. That would more than double Liverpool's previous highest spending season, which was the 2018-19 season, in which they brought in the likes of Alisson, Naby Keita, and Fabinho. It is a volte-face that has caught many onlookers, and even Liverpool fans by surprise, not least in light of Liverpool's chief finance officer Jenny Beecham having hinted at a continued focus upon stability and spending in moderation only a few short months ago. I've had lots of messages from people on YouTube, social media, and indeed friends on group chats who are shocked by Liverpool's spending and who have asked me either how it is possible for them to spend so much, or why they appear to have adopted such a different strategy in terms of restraint and spending within the transfer market, which tends to be a telltale sign that I should make a video about a subject and look to monetize my world-beating analysis, rather than giving it to them on WhatsApp for free. Bloody scroungers. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to Merseyside, one of my favourite counties in England, whose port played a key role in the Atlantic slave trade. Though I should stress, it isn't one of my favourite counties for that reason. I am personally of the view that the Atlantic slave trade was a net negative, and that isn't the only hot take that you're going to get from me in this video, as we take a look at how FSG have stumbled upon a few £100 million down the back of a sofa at Anfield, why they have decided to spend it now, after comfortably winning the Premier League title, as opposed to in previous seasons, when they appear to be in more dire need of reinforcements, and what all of that means for the rest of the Premier League. As always, the how is easier to explain than the why in terms of Liverpool's sudden surge in transfer expenditure, because it requires less speculation. On the face of it, the answer to the question how are Liverpool able to spend so much, which I have seen asked by a lot of supporters, particularly of rival clubs on social media, seems pretty straightforward. Liverpool are one of the highest revenue-generating clubs on the planet. They just won the Premier League and reached the quarter-finals of the Champions League, and they had a positive net spend last season. Over the last 3 seasons, Liverpool had a negative net spend of just €171.4 million, or £146 million, which is less than the likes of Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, West Ham and Newcastle United, and almost a fifth of Chelsea's extraordinary €787 million net spend, which is the highest in the world during that time. That's despite the fact that Liverpool's revenue, at over £600 million, is the 8th highest in all of world football, much larger than Chelsea's, almost double Newcastle's, at about 4 times the size of Bournemouth's. In other words then, Liverpool have a lot of stored up expenditure, at least when it comes to transfers. It's a slightly different story when it comes to wages, and overall expenditure, where Liverpool have consistently maintained a very high wage bill over the last 5 or 6 years, which peaked during Jurgen Klopp's last season in charge. In the last set of fully published accounts for the 2023-24 season, Liverpool's wage bill climbed to £386 million, the second highest in the Premier League. That wasn't just a club record for Liverpool, it was the 4th highest wage bill ever posted in the Premier League, trailing only Man City in the last 2 seasons, and Chelsea in 2022-23, and the 5th highest in the world, trailing only Man City, Barcelona, Real Madrid and PSG. That was partly inflated by £9.6 million in severance payments that were paid out to Jurgen Klopp and his backroom staff upon their departures, as well as sign-on bonuses for big money signings like Dominic Szoboszlai, Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch, but Liverpool have consistently had one of the 4 highest wage bills in the Premier League and one of the 8 highest in the world in recent years, regardless of any exceptional or unusual items. Whilst Liverpool's net spend may have been modest in recent years, at least in relation to their success, they also haven't been great sellers. In the 2023-24 season, Liverpool only recorded a £22 million profit from player sales due to the way in which Fabinho and Jordan Henderson's sales to Saudi Arabia, who were the only players to leave Liverpool for a fee that season, were structured. That was the 7th lowest figure in terms of profit from player sales in the Premier League, and in the 5 years preceding that, Liverpool only raised £173 million in profit from player sales overall. That's still more than the likes of Tottenham or Man United, but it is less than Brighton, Leicester and Everton, and it's dwarfed by the 2 highest revenue-generating Premier League clubs when it comes to player sales, namely Man City and Chelsea, who use the sale of academy graduates in particular in order to fund a lot of their spending. Due to their considerable wage bill and meagre profits from player sales, Liverpool have posted pre-tax losses in 4 out of the last 5 seasons, and in the sole exception, which was the 2021-22 season, in which they reached the Champions League final, they only posted a £7 million profit. Over the last 5 seasons as a whole, Liverpool have posted pre-tax losses totaling £110 million, compared with pre-tax profits of £246 million in the 5 years before that, between the 2014-15 and 2018-19 seasons, in which they only once posted a pre-tax loss. Despite increasing revenue, and particularly commercial revenue consistently throughout this period, Liverpool's rising expenditure has resulted in a fairly notable shift in terms of profitability. It should be noted that one of the reasons for Liverpool's shift from profitability to loss-making was COVID, which football finance expert Swiss Ramble estimates cost the club more than £100 million, but even accounting for that loss, Liverpool have gone from posting consistently high pre-tax profits to, at best, breaking even. What's more, Liverpool's biggest ever pre-tax loss wasn't during COVID, it was in the 2023-24 season, which is the last season for which we have a full set of accounts, in which the Reds lost a chunky pre-tax £57 million. That was the 4th highest loss in the Premier League in 23-24, trailing only Bournemouth, Aston Villa, and the league's loss leaders Manchester United. Hey, at least they're leading something. That's the main thing. Liverpool's record loss in 23-24 was the result of record £114 million player amortisation costs, a record £386 million wage bill, including Klopp and his team's contractually agreed nearly £10 million payouts, and, most notably of all, the lack of Champions League football. For the first time in 7 years, Liverpool didn't compete in the Champions League, which most likely cost them in excess of £50 million. Combine all of this with Liverpool's recently promoted CFO, Jenny Beecham, mentioned during the introduction, stating, quote, "Operating a financially sustainable club continues to be our priority and, with the continued increase in costs, it is essential to grow income streams year on year to maintain financial stability," end quote, when the last set of accounts showing record losses were published, and how Liverpool are able to spend so much money this summer might not be quite as stupid of a question as it initially appears. Nonetheless, despite all of this, Liverpool are still in among the healthiest financial positions of any team in the Premier League, and in the world. They may have gone from big profits to minor losses, but relatively speaking, they are just that. Minor losses. Only 4 so-called super clubs have made a net profit since FSG bought Liverpool, and the Reds are one of them. Even a £110 million pre-tax loss over the last 5 years is less than Manchester United lost in the 2023-24 season alone. From a PSR perspective, that also doesn't account for so-called allowable deductions on things like academy, community projects, and infrastructure spending. Liverpool's £57 million loss in 2023-24, for example, included nearly £40 million of likely allowable deductions, meaning that they lost less than £20 million as far as the Premier League and their regulations are concerned. Factor in £34 million of allowable deductions in the 22-23 season, and Liverpool's small £9 million loss actually becomes a £25 million profit, or net outcome, in the eyes of the Premier League, and a positive £7 million net outcome over the last 2 years as a whole. What all of that means is that, based upon the Premier League's 3-year monitoring period, Liverpool could have lost more than £150 million this season in real terms, or up to £112 million after allowable deductions, and still not fallen foul of the Premier League's rules in terms of profitability and sustainability. In actual fact, though, Liverpool not only won't have lost anything like that this season, they will almost certainly have returned to profitability, and a hefty profit at that. Liverpool returned to the Champions League this season, reaching the quarter-finals, which will likely have pocketed them more than €100 million. They raised about £50 million through the sales of Sepp van der Berg, Fabio Carvalho and Bobby Clark. They spent barely £30 million on Federico Chiesa and Georgi Mamachvili. The staff portion of their wage bill is likely to have fallen as a result of Arne Slot and his team being paid significantly less than Jurgen Klopp and his team. Domestic broadcast and prize money will be up as a result of winning the Premier League title, and matchday revenue will also likely see a decent rise as a result of the £80 million expansion of Anfield, which saw the stadium's capacity increased from 54 to 61,000 this season, accompanied by a 2% hike in ticket prices. There are several variables, and we won't know for sure until this season's accounts are published, but it wouldn't be a great surprise if Liverpool's revenue rose by €150 million this season. Certainly, it will have risen by at least €100 million. That's an increase which would likely take Liverpool from having the 8th to the 5th, 4th, or even the 3rd highest revenue in all of world football, trailing only Real Madrid, PSG, and maybe Man City, Barcelona, and Bayern Munich. It will almost certainly see Liverpool climb above Manchester United for only the second time in the history of the Deloitte Football Money League, the first being in 2022, when Liverpool reached that Champions League final and the Red Devils only finished 6th, and it may well take them to being the highest revenue-generating club in the Premier League for the first time since the Premier League was founded in 1992. FSG have come in for a fair amount of criticism for penny pinching at Anfield, and John Henry has certainly done exceptionally well out of the club, seeing the value of his asset climb from £300 million when he bought the club to £4 billion now. That is a 1,200% increase, worth £3.7 billion in less than 15 years. But Liverpool's revenue growth under their stewardship, accompanied by a much improved team, has been mightily impressive. Liverpool's revenue in Henry's first season owning the club, at €203 million, was less than half the size of Real Madrid or Barcelona's, and equated to just 55% of rivals Manchester United's. In 14 years, that has likely quadrupled to more than €800 million in the season just gone, almost certainly overtaking Man United, quite possibly Barcelona, and not a million miles away from Real Madrid. On top of the sales of Sepp van der Berg, Fabio Carvalho and Bobby Clark last season, Liverpool have also received a reported £3 million for Nat Phillips, around £10 million, including a month's worth of wages, for Trent Alexander-Arnold, between £12.5 to £18 million subject to add-ons for Caoimhe Kelleher, and a potential £34 million for Jarell Quansah. Because Clark, Phillips, Alexander-Arnold, Kelleher and Quansah were academy graduates, all of those sales will be booked as pure profit for accounting purposes. Meanwhile, Van der Berg and Carvalho cost Liverpool less than £10 million combined. It's also highly unlikely that Liverpool are done there in terms of departures. At least one, if not both, of Kostas Tsimikas and Andy Robertson seem likely to depart at left-back. Luis Diaz and Darwin Núñez could both be available for the right price, and that price is likely to be a substantial one, with rumours that Federico Chiesa, Stefan Bajcetic, Tyler Morton, Harvey Elliott, and Ben Doak could also all be for sale. That is £60 million guaranteed for players that Liverpool have already sold, most likely at least another £100 million if we assume that one of Diaz or Núñez departs, along with one of the two left-backs and a couple of youngsters, and probably in excess of £200 million if Liverpool take a maximalist approach and receive tempting offers for all of the players that they are willing to move on. Liverpool could probably afford to lose more than £200 million in the 2025-26 season, based upon a small loss in 23-24 and a likely big profit in 24-25, without running into any regulatory trouble at all. But even if they spend €400 million or £340 million acquiring all of their primary targets, which would make it the fifth highest spending transfer window in the history of the sport by any club, they still won't come close to making a loss that dramatic, not least because the cost of their signings this season will be amortised over the length of their contracts, with Wirtz, Frimpong and Kerkez so far all having signed at least 5-year deals. In the case of Wirtz, who is by far Liverpool's most expensive signing, both this season and indeed of all time, his reported nearly £189 million outlay, in terms of his fee, wages, and all other fees combined, before add-ons, works out as an annual £37.8 million expense in Liverpool's accounts. So, in terms of the how, whilst it might not be quite as stupid of a question as it first seems, it is still pretty straightforward. Liverpool have enormous revenue, it will have reached an all-time high this season, they have been very careful and considered in the transfer market for a long time, and they are in absolutely no regulatory trouble as a result. As for the why then, well, there are a few reasons. The most obvious is that Liverpool's squad needs refreshing. They may have just won the league, and won it well, but their two best players are both 33 years of age, they just lost their chief creator over the last 5 years from fullback, and they had the fifth oldest average starting 11 in the Premier League last season, and the oldest among the Big Six. Injecting some youth is vital not only in terms of Liverpool's energy levels and intensity next season, but also in terms of squad planning long term. Then there is the fact that everyone else is also strengthening. Though Liverpool won the title by 10 points this season, Manchester City won 20 points fewer than they did the previous season, and at least 15 fewer than they had in any of the preceding 5 seasons. Meanwhile, Arsenal won 15 fewer points than last season, and 10 fewer than the season before that. Liverpool likely would have won more than 84 points this season had they not taken their foot off the gas with the title wrapped up ahead of their last 4 matches and gone boozing it up with Wayne Lineker and Ibiza, but the point here is that Man City and Arsenal suffered a really significant drop-off this season and will inevitably be targeting a rebound next season, aided by a strengthening of their squads. Manchester City have already spent more than £110 million this summer on Tijani Reinders, Rayan Aït-Nouri, Rayan Cherki and Marcus Bettinelli, on top of the £185 million that they spent in January on the likes of Omar Marmoush, Nico Gonzalez and Abdulkadir Kusanov. Even Liverpool's anticipated peak spending this summer, of £300 million, would only equal what Man City have already spent over the last 6 months, and it seems unlikely that the citizens are done there, with the likes of Tino Livramento, Flamengo's Wesley, and Norwegian wonderkid Sverre Naipan all having been linked with summer moves to the Etihad. Factor in the return of Rodri, arguably the best midfielder in the world, along with potentially greater availability of Ruben Dias, Nathan Ake, John Stones and Oscar Bob, who all missed large parts of last season, and it's not hard to see why Man City could pose a much greater threat again next season. We can't talk about injury crises without mentioning Arsenal. I'm not sure that my DMs could handle the torrent of gooners that would lay siege to it, who will hope to have Ricardo Calafiori, Ben White, Martin Odegaard and Bukayo Saka fit for more of next season, as well as landing a long sought-after talismanic number 9, whether that be Victor Gyökeres or Benjamin Sesko, closing in on former Liverpool target Martin Zubimendi, and rivalling the Reds for Ajax's Yoral Hato. Even Chelsea, who finished 4th this season, up from 6th last season and 12th the season before that, will be targeting major improvements with such a young squad that has been so heavily invested in addition to welcoming Dario Asuga, Eshta Vau, and Liam Delap next season. So Liverpool can't afford to sit still. Liverpool legend Graham Souness once said, quote, "The time to strengthen is when you're at the top. You can bring in players who don't have to make an impact right away." End quote. Alex Ferguson famously subscribed to a similar mantra, bringing in the likes of Roy Keane, Ruud van Nistelrooy and Cristiano Ronaldo off the back of title-winning campaigns, and exercising a ruthlessness when it came to moving players on, regardless of the emotional attachment that had been developed through winning things with them in the previous season. For Liverpool, also, it's not just that their appeal is at pretty much an all-time high as the reigning champions of the world's biggest and richest league with their highest ever revenue, it's also that they have missed out on so many targets in recent years. The likes of Martin Zubimendi, Moises Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, Ricardo Calafiori, Lenny Yoro, Anthony Gordon and Takefusa Kubo were all either reported or confirmed Liverpool targets, who the Reds have failed to sign in recent years, either because they couldn't justify the finances of the deal, the player chose to join someone else, or both of the above. That means that Liverpool have a lot of stored up targets in areas they want to improve in, as well as a lot of stored up resources from having kept their powder dry and missed out on players in previous windows. Then there's the fact that both Liverpool's sporting director Richard Hughes and manager Arne Slot were brought in from Bournemouth and Feyenoord 12 months ago, during a window in which Liverpool basically did nothing in terms of incomings, meaning that they haven't yet had the opportunity to put their own stamp on what is effectively Jurgen Klopp and the previous regime's squad. That squad is a strong one, as we saw this season, but it's one that both men will want to illustrate their talents by improving and making better suited to Slot's vision of the club. When asked about recruitment after winning the Premier League title, Arne Slot said that Liverpool would love to strengthen, but that there aren't many players who would improve them, and most of those players are already playing for super clubs, and probably therefore don't want to leave. It makes sense, right? When you're the best team in the Premier League, and among the best in the world, there aren't exactly a plethora of players who are just ready and willing to join you, who will actually be an upgrade on what you've already got. That probably helps to explain Liverpool's willingness to pay a club and potentially a British record fee for Florian Wirtz, a deal which even Manchester City reportedly considered to be too expensive for them. There are conflicting reports as to whether it was Wirtz's expense or the player's desire to join Liverpool that led to Man City pulling out, but either way, it was a very expensive deal. Wirtz is a world-class player who wasn't at one of the traditional super clubs and was therefore available. In fact, Wirtz is probably the best player in the world who isn't currently at a so-called super club, or who wasn't at least, and you could even argue that the second best, and the second most sought after, is Alexander Isak, who Liverpool are reportedly also interested in signing, and who would quite possibly command an even greater fee than Wirtz. As far as Liverpool are concerned, the opportunity to sign a player of Wirtz or Isak's calibre, who can significantly improve the team that they've already got, doesn't come around too often, and with the resources and pull to go after them now, it would be foolish to wait around. There is also a degree to which the market feels a lot more fluid this summer, as though the post-COVID blues in terms of club finances and most super clubs' PSR concerns have begun to subside, creating a more lubricated environment to do business. Yes, we're going with lubricated. So, why are Liverpool suddenly spending so much? Well, the first part is similar to the answer to how they're able to spend so much, and that is because, relatively speaking, they haven't for a long time. The Reds have an excellent but ageing squad, which romped to the Premier League title, but looked a little tired and outrun in the cup competitions, with a handful of first-team players either likely to, or already having moved on, and the failure to secure former targets has left them with cash in the bank and areas they feel are overdue a refresh. Their rivals also either already have or are widely expected to spend big and be stronger next season. They have a sporting director and head coach who are as yet untested at Anfield with a point to prove, and there are opportunities to sign players who they feel could be long-term difference makers at the highest level, which don't come around too often. Oh, and also, having previously entertained the idea of a sale, it now appears as though John Henry is committed to holding on to Liverpool, perhaps leading to a greater willingness to make long-term investments, even if it causes some short-term pain to the club's balance sheet. Or, maybe they just feel like it. Who knows? I feel like a fair amount of this video is quite obvious, but maybe that's just because I'm so wrapped up in the world of football, and specifically football finance in recent videos, that I live in a bit of a bubble. Hopefully there was some value added, some factors that you hadn't previously thought about, even if you're a Liverpool fan, and, if nothing else, hopefully you enjoyed the design of some of my fancy new graphs, which take me what could only be described as a totally unjustifiable amount of time to compile. And if all else fails, at least now when people ask me this question, either strangers on social media or friends in group chats, I can just send them a link to this video. Thank you all as ever for watching today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Hit the like button if you did enjoy it, I should say. And of course, make sure that you are subscribed and have notifications turned on, not just for this channel, HITC Sevens, but also my second channel, Alfie both of which should be about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might enjoy watching after this one. You can also find me on various social media platforms, usually via the username @HITC Sevens. And you can now support me additionally, should you wish to do so, either via the Alfie YouTube channel or via buymeacoffee.com/AlfiePotsarma. All of the cool kids are doing it. All of the links to do all of those things that you should definitely all go and do immediately should be down in the video description below, but more important than any of that, until next time, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you soon. Cheers.